Hi, everyone. Welcome to Screw the Stock Market. Today, we had a really cool episode with Bryce Henson. He's the CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp, which is a gym that I've gone to. We have one right down the street here, halfway between your house and my house. And it's pretty awesome. But the show was really great. We talked about that, but we talked about a bunch of other really cool things. What do you think, Aziz?
It was great. He hit a lot of huge milestones. He dropped gems. There was discussions about mindset. There was discussions about risk. There was discussions about the entrepreneurial process, working through
Finding
adversity.
mentors.
Yeah, mentorship and networking. So it was really good. He's the CEO of a business that does a franchising model, but he's gone through a gamut of things to get to where he is. And he's partnered with the owner of the company for a number of years. So he knows all the ins and outs and struggles to get to this business to where it is now, where it's like one of the fastest growing franchises in the country. So there's a lot of insightful information and things that you can get out of this episode that would at least motivate you, change your mindset, at least get you to where you need to get going. And it'll give you a little bit of a behind the scenes view about how the whole franchising business works.
Yeah, we think it's a great one. We think it's a really good episode. Tons of value, great energy, and inspiration for days.
Yeah.
So thank you
And
guys for tuning in and enjoy the show. Oh, please go ahead.
no, and I was gonna say this is something that changed not only his life but his entire family's lives. He said his mother, his brother, his sister, everybody. Yeah, definitely check it out.
Thank you guys. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Screw the Stock Market. On this show, we discuss a variety of alternative asset classes, tools to help you unleash your money, a success mindset, and inspiration to see what's possible when we do things differently.
Hi there. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We work really hard to create a lot of content that is educational and informative. And we also want to be the best listeners out there. We want to understand what you are interested in, what kind of investor you are, what your objectives are. And so we've created a survey at screwthestockmarket.com/survey. And there you'll be able to take the quick survey and we'll be in listening. And that'll help us be able to create better content and we can engage more about how we can help you achieve your goals. So again, screwthestockmarket.com/survey. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Screw the Stock Market. We're really excited today to have with us Bryce Henson. Bryce is the CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp. This is the world's fastest growing fitness boot camp franchise. And I'm proud to say I've been there and it's pretty awesome. I'm just really excited to talk to you some. We'll talk a little bit more about the actual Fit Body Boot Camp later, but having over 10 years of experience in the fitness industry and owning 2 Fit Body Boot Camp locations, his passion is spreading fitness to the world, in addition to mentoring fitness professionals on how to grow their businesses and change more lives in their local communities. So it goes on. There's more to it, but we just want to start talking to you and start the conversation. Bryce, we're so happy to have you with us. Thanks for coming.
Alex, appreciate the invite. Definitely excited to have a chat today.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we haven't had an entrepreneur on the show for a little while. So this is exciting.
Yeah, so that we have different types of episodes, right? We have investment episodes, and we try to focus a little bit on that intersection of investing and entrepreneurship, because I feel like that's where a lot of magic is happening. And franchising is definitely part of that, right? It's a place where you can put your money to work and you still have to be an entrepreneur, and it's a little bit of both. We're happy to talk to you and learn a little bit more about your journey from where you started, about this opportunity, and we can just tell stories along the way and see. So why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got started and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I'll be happy to jump in with the backstory. Before I do, I just want to give you guys massive love and acknowledgement. When we set this up, when I first learned about the title of the podcast, Screw the Stock Market, I was like, oh, I love that, because certainly the stock market can produce a value. But I'm under the strong belief that your audience needs to invest not in the S&P, but the S in me, the investment in yourself. Because when you invest in yourself, that's where the magic happens. So I want to start there because that's a firm belief of mine and I want to give you some acknowledgement and praise. But my backstory, I lived in Southern California for 20 years, but originally I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I spent the first 10 years there and I had a very volatile childhood to start. My mom, bless her heart, was an amazing lady, sweet soul. Unfortunately, she just married the wrong guy who is a drug addict, addicted to alcohol and gambling, not necessarily the trifecta for a good family upbringing. As you would imagine, had more dark days than good. And it's interesting. My big passion now is to inspire fitness and change lives, which is the mission of Fit Body Bootcamp. My personal mission is to teach leadership, it's to promote capitalism, and it's to defend free speech. And specifically, when I look at my first 10 years, I like to think I had an opposite of a capitalist type approach. I lived in communism and in socialism, actually, and not in the literal way, but the figurative way. And many of your audience can probably relate, especially if you've come from a broken home with addiction, etc. For me, censorship, fear, being quiet, especially when my father was, under the influence, was just how I shaped the world was shaped for me. But thankfully, by the grace of God, a fortuitous situation happened. My mom mustered up enough strength and got us out of that situation. So grateful for today. And I spent the latter half of my childhood through high school and college in the state of Michigan. And it was a rocky landing. My mom had been out of the workforce for a long period of time. So for the first handful of years, we used to run out of money before we used to run out of month. Thankfully, my grandma took us in. Otherwise, we would have probably been on a shelter or worse. So a lot of volatility. And I always say for first world standards, because later in life, I was able to live in South America for a couple of years. And I saw the difference between first world and third world standards. And my friends, you should not confuse the two. And so that gave me a lot of perspective. But needless to say, challenging that period of my life. But one thing that I gained a lot of value from is seeing my mom step up, be responsible, take the higher road, and really saw her work multiple jobs. So I think, seeing that ingrained in a strong work ethic for me. And that really shaped my mindset, because at a very young age, I realized that, hey, if it has to be, it's up to me. I'm going to make something of myself and be a man of means. And how to do that, I need to invest in myself. I need to learn how to be a businessman, learn how to sell, lead, market, etc. And that was really the foundation. So those are the first 20-year foundation. I'm sure we can continue to dialogue from there.
That's awesome. That tends to be the journey for most people. An initial moment of struggle early on in their lives, and that just catapults them to trying to do the best they can. I know for me, there was no addiction or whatnot issues, but just coming in as an immigrant, we had to start over from scratch, from rock bottom. And both my parents were struggling, working multiple jobs day in and day out to finish one shift, and you switch it to another shift and to the night shift. And then I had to step up and help as much as possible. So it spurred in me as well the drive to, I got to do something to make life as easy as possible and succeed, at least to repay them back at the very end when they retire, which is one of my main motivations.
Love that. And it's interesting. I just have this, we were talking off camera, I have this love for the immigrant edge mentality. My business partner, his family, his name's Bryce Henson. He's the founder of Fit Body Bootcamp. I'm the CEO. I was one of the first franchise partners back in 2012, ended up scaling to a handful of locations, and then became the vice president, and then now eventually run the brand. But Bryce, who started it, his family escaped Soviet, communist rule back in 1980. And your story, Aziz, and I know, Alex, your story, your family comes from Central America. And the immigrant edge, it's such a beautiful thing, because the mindset, the sacrifice that your families and our families had to endure was really challenging on one hand. So it really was a big wake-up call, I'm sure, for all of us. On the other side of the coin, though, it taught us work ethic and grind and grit that probably has served us really well to this day. So I want to just acknowledge what you said, Aziz.
I think we're going to borrow that term from you, the immigrant edge, because I've never heard that before, but there is something to it, right? There's data that kind of shows how immigrants are more likely to end up starting businesses. And there is this grit, like you said, that I think comes with it. We've talked about it before, about it's a form of trauma, right? You're separated from all the people you love, all these things. So I think we're going to borrow that from you. And I'll give you credit. Bryce Henson's immigrant edge.
My business partner actually was who coined it, but certainly take it. But I think there's so much truth to that, because there's grit, there's grind, there's sacrifice. And I didn't fully have that kind of aha until I moved to South America back in 2010 for 2 years. When you move, your language is taken away from you, your culture is taken away from you, and it's so challenging. You have to work twice as hard just to stay at equilibrium. So that experience was really helpful for me, and I know it has been obviously for both of your families. Alex, feel free to take that term and run with it, my friend.
No doubt. We'll put that everywhere we go now. Okay, first of all, I also want to acknowledge too, like the challenges that you face, what you just described. I think that's something that's just resonating with me, as in my family, I've seen some struggles with addiction and everything like that. And it's hard. It's heartbreaking. It's hard. And so just, again, I'm really inspired by the way you're able to come out of it. And like you said, stronger for it in every sense. Just wanted to say that. And so now you're an adult, you've traveled, you've done some stuff, and then Tell us a little bit about that first. Even before that, did you ever have the path shown to you of, hey, get good grades, go to school, go to college, get a job, and work until you die?
That
Because,
trap.
yeah, was that ever presented to you as the most appealing, safest option?
It was, and good intentioned as well from my mother. And bless her heart, she didn't know any other way. So from her perspective, she just thought, okay, like go to school, get good grades, go to college, and then be at your 9 to 5, and then invest in the stock market. That was really the path that was presented to me, and it wasn't the path that I decided to choose from, because what I realized is if I invest in myself, if I learn how to be a businessman, gain business acumen, learn how to sell, learn how to persuade, learn how to lead people, and really, when I look back at my success in my career, I've learned 3 skills. I've learned how to lead, I've learned how to sell, and I've learned how to market. And if you can learn those 3 skills, you can write your ticket in life. So that wasn't the path that was presented to me, but through a fortuitous situation, graduating from college, putting myself through school. I used to donate blood plasma just to pay the bills and put myself through college. When I graduated, I ended up getting an internship in Los Angeles, which is what moved me out to LA in 2004. And then I kept with the position. I made a good impression with the entrepreneur who started the company, and he taught me a very valuable skill. He taught me to sell. He taught me to persuade. And that really was my ticket to open my mind to the entrepreneurial path. And he was still is to this day, incredible entrepreneur. So while my mom did her best to be able to show me what she thought her best path would be, really, it wasn't until I got to California, fortuitously got under the wing of a mega entrepreneur that showed me entrepreneurship, showed me leadership, showed me marketing, but he taught me the skill of sales and persuasion. And I carried that with me for the first decade of my career. And I think that was really a fundamental aspect for me seeing the value of an entrepreneurship, the value of being a business owner, and the wealth, the time freedom, and the financial freedom that could create. So that was really my foundation into the working world when I moved out to California in 2004.
So 2 things I want to touch on what you just said. First, selling your plasma just made my body internally cringe, just because I have a deep needle phobia. I'd rather sell my body to the knife than do anything with needles. I commend you
We're going
for
to
that.
censor that.
Yeah.
No, but
Done it over again. Do I have any regrets? Nah, it probably wasn't the funnest thing, but I did what I needed to do. But,
yeah,
but
no,
I can respect.
I commend you. I commend you. The second thing, though, which is more relevant, is the aspect where you're talking about meeting the entrepreneur who took you under his wing and kind of guided you through your growth. This is one of the things that we talk about on the show quite often. There's always this kind of like lone wolf mentality that most people think about when they first try to get started in business, thinking like, oh, I got to do this on my own. I can't trust anybody. I got to hustle. We've even had a guest that was told us in the past that's what his parents had taught him just growing up. You can't trust anybody. You got to do everything yourself, this, that, and the other. And that is the worst way to go if you ever want to succeed or accomplish anything. It's all about your connections, networking, and mentorship. And you're fortunate enough that you were able to find somebody that was able to guide you through that. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how did that happen? How did that process come about?
Yeah, so that's an incredible point, and I feel like guides and mentorship is so important. In fact, I'm in the fitness industry. Alex, you kicked it off overseeing Fit Body Bootcamp. If you break it down, Fit Body Bootcamp, we're a coaching program. We're an accountability program. We're not a big box gym where it's like you have access to weights. What happens is, what we realize is people need accountability, people need coaching, people need mentorship from a fitness perspective. Taking a step back, 80% of our population in the States is either statistically obese or overweight. And what's worse, friends, 20% of our child population is statistically obese. And really what that shows is people take the path of least resistance. They're not making strong choices. And there's a void of mentorship. There's a void of leadership. There's a void of coaching, which is I'm really passionate about. So I want to start there. But when I moved to California, I ended up getting an internship, as I just mentioned. And I was an investment in myself, actually. The program, it was a career development program. It was called Dream Careers. I joined the first program back in 2004. And this entrepreneur named Eric, who's a dear friend to this day, actually gave a keynote at one of our training events earlier this month in Miami. And he ran this program where the students would invest in the program because of their experience. He enrolled about 300 students from across the country and world into LA every summer, and then set them up with internship for career development so they can learn a trade or a craft in the internship throughout the 2 months, set course credit in logistics. And as it turns out, the first program I enrolled in, there was only 50 students. It's the very first year. And in other cities like New York and LA and DC, where those programs are located, there's typically a metro system, London and Hong Kong. But in California and in Los Angeles specifically, not a good public transportation system. So what Eric did, my first mentor and the entrepreneur that started the company, he used to rent conversion vans and have a van bus, your little kid and go to school bus, and group students next to each other. Now, the first year of any entrepreneur, you're doing a lot of things himself. So he actually was a van driver. Now, there was, I think, 5 or 6 vans that year in the summer because it was the first program. It's very, very small. And fortuitously, even though it was a blessing disguised as a tragedy, as it turns out, just the way my van tour went to work, I had a 2-hour van ride just one way to my work in Los Angeles traffic. And what was even quote unquote worse was the second to last stop was an hour away from my work. So the first hour, we drop off all the other kids. The second to last stop was at Fox, and then I'd still have an hour to get to my location. And realistically, it was only about 15 miles, but it was in like the thick of LA traffic. Now, my first impression was like, man, this is a bummer, 2 hours one way. But Aziz, to answer your question from a mentorship perspective, what I realized very quickly was like, shoot, I have an hour one way and then an hour on the way back. So 2 hours a day with this like mega entrepreneur visionary. I'm going to get free business coaching. So from a genuine perspective and also just from a curiosity perspective, I just thought for the next month, I'm going to ask this guy like every single business question I possibly can because I'm very interested in entrepreneurship and business. And I did. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was genuine. I was authentic. I was just getting business coaching and guidance, right? Mentorship. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I was making an incredible impression on a guy that would change my life. And then eventually he offered me my first sales gig. He brought me back to Los Angeles, not only as a student, but actually to run the program, taught me how to lead, and it worked out really well. So my message there is not only from a coaching, a mentorship, finding someone who can show you the way is so important, but also sometimes the obstacles the way, these quote unquote tragedies, they can actually be blessings disguised as a tragedy. And for me, that's what worked out and really laid the foundation for my first real mentor that I learned sales and leadership from.
Amazing. Yeah, the stories of how people connect with them. That one sounds like chance, but at the same time, there was a little bit of chance, but you also took an opportunity and made the most of it. And we see that kind of as a recurring theme, is just being on the lookout and maybe even just a general level of friendliness and openness and outgoingness to just talk to someone, and you never know where it might lead.
And for me, it's interesting. I have a lot of flaws, just like human nature does. But one thing that I feel like is just factory installed is my curiosity. And that actually, people that are curious in other people specifically, and actually I take that back. I am not curious at all on how machines work, how cameras work, how computers work. That I have no interest in that. But how people work is fascinating to me. So one thing that I've learned from him, but also too from a sales and persuasion and leadership perspective, if you can be curious, if you can take a genuine interest in someone else, that opens up the door for life. So that was probably another big takeaway from that lesson. And to your point, Alex, definitely fortuitous. There was a chance, but also too, I put myself out there and was curious enough to make a good impression.
How cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Fit Body Boot Camp. Is that tongue twister
that
built into the...
The funny thing is, to your point, typically speaking, guys like us are a bit hard-headed, so don't actually attract to the initial marketing that we push out. So typically we only market to women because women are a bit more open to coaching. And then what happens is, I've heard this like dozens of times throughout the 10 years I've been in the brand, actually 12 years now. But initially the wife's, hey, I'm going to check out this Fit Body Boot Camp thing. And the husband's, the Fit Booty Camp? What camp are you talking about? Makes fun of it for the first 3 months. Sign me
up, okay.
And then all of a sudden, like 2 months later, the wife starts looking good. Wait, you mean only 30-minute sessions? You're there half an hour and you're looking like that? And then before you know it, the guy just comes jumping in. So all good on the Fit Body Boot Camp or Booty Camp.
That's exactly my story too. Like I said, I was really excited when I saw that come through as a potential guest for Fit Body Boot Camp CEO. I said, oh, that's cool. Like I've been going there. And exactly like that. My wife started. And I even told Aziz earlier, I was like, yeah, it's the gym that I've been going to. It's mostly geared towards women. And he was making a joke about it because I loved it. First of all, I love the fact that it's 30 minutes in and out. I'm super busy and I don't have time to 45 minutes and then you get back home and all this stuff. So I love the appeal. Everything's all set up for me. You just get in there and go. And not to mention actually the owners too, like the coaches at the gym that I go to, they're just amazing, right? There is something real to it. I'll also add a little anecdote too, because I played sports in high school and I never was one to see the value in the cheerleading. I'd be trying to listen to the coach or trying to see what the plays were. And I'm like, I can't hear because of the cheerleaders or because all the noise and stuff. But when later on I went and I ran a marathon and I remember it was like mile 22 and I was just down. I was low. I was not feeling good. And a complete stranger just came and gave me a high five. And he said, "Hey, you are 4 miles away from running a freaking marathon, man." And then he took it away. Like it was really magical. There really is something to encouragement and that cheerleading. And that's something that I felt when I've been at Fit Body Boot Camp. And tell me a little bit more about what you offer and how it works. Because again, I've just been there as a guy who's just working out and it's great. But tell me a little bit more about it.
And before you jump into that, I just want to emphasize I wasn't making fun of Alex for going to the gym. I was making fun of him because of the way he described it. It's a great environment. It's a bunch of mothers and all these nice women there they'll go there and it's like a really good environment for them. And like, I just really fit in really well. I was like, you fit in very well because you're so motherly, which is a description that a friend of ours used to describe him years ago.
Nice.
It's like,
Love
Alex,
that.
you're just so motherly.
What a motherly guy you are, Alex. No, all
Yeah.
good banter, truth be told. But no, thanks for sharing. Fit Body, what we do is we do 30-minute high intensity interval training sessions. So we like to say we give twice the workout, twice the result in half the time. And you just hit it, Alex. I mean, people are busy. There's a lot of stuff. Life comes at you fast. All the stimulus, the technology, it encapsulates our world. So sometimes even people are like 30 minutes, only 30 minutes. Can I get a result in 30 minutes? I'm like, hey, check this out. And typically after one session, that new person is just absolutely gassed. I was like, oh, I can see that. To this day, not only am I the Fit Body CEO, but I'm also a Fit Body owner. I own one location here in Southern California where we're based. I'm also a Fit Body coach and I'm also a Fit Body client. Today's Tuesday and I get my 5:15 workout every Tuesday morning. If my studio is a bit closer to my house, I would probably get in there 3 or 4 times a week. So I lift weights on the side, but ultimately it's in a great program, provides also not only a great result, but a great community and relationship. And our clients specifically, they're not coming in to shave off a second to make the NFL combine. They're just trying to live a healthy and fit life, build lean muscle, drop fat, and also too great friends in the network and the community that also is a big factor at play. So that's just a little bit big picture about the program.
To pivot towards the business side of things, how was this whole industry, not the industry, but how was the business created? Like, where did it start? How did it grow? And how did it turn into what it is now? Because it's like one of the fastest growing franchises, right? For the fitness industry right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll give you the foundation and how my business partner, our founder, started it, and then also storytell how I, initially got introduced. So back in 2008 is when Bedros Keuilian, my business partner, the founder of Fit Body, launched the program. And he was a personal trainer. He went through his own transformation in high school. So he just wanted to give back. And he was running these boot camp sessions outdoors. And then with a lot of things the environment that was changing, the Great Recession, if you will, back in 2008, what he found is a lot of clients, actually before he started running boot camps, he was doing one-on-one personal training. Forgive me on that. But then what happened in 2008 was the Great Recession and the real estate crash. And a lot of people had a hard time paying $6, $7, $8, even $900 for a personal trainer. So what he envisioned was, what if I can take the one-on-one, just do it in a group setting and go out to parks and really be able to meet our clients where they're at there so they could still get a great result, but also get a great result from an affordable perspective compared to a one-on-one personal trainer. So that was how his vision for Fit Body started, transitioning and making adjustment from one-on-one boot camps outside. But then as the brand started, or other fitness owners reached out to Bedros, asked him like, hey, how do you do this? How do you set things up? He had this idea. What if I can license this program and really help other personal trainers so that way they don't have to trade hours for time. They could leverage their time more. And that was the initial prototype for the first Fit Body location, which he took and subleased from cheerleading studios, because cheerleading studios usually use the studios in the afternoons after the high school girls are finished with school. So in the mornings, it's an open slate. So he actually recommended his licensees to link up with cheerleading studios, just do morning sessions, but that way you don't have to get a big lease and the space is there. And that was really the foundation of how the licensee program started. And then fast forward a couple years, more licensee program or owners joined on board. And then we realized, man, like the boot camp, the program is filling. We're only limited to morning sessions with the cheerleading studio. It might be a good idea actually to sublease proper spaces so we can run sessions in the mornings and evenings. And that was the initial vision that led to the franchise becoming a proper brick and mortar franchise, moving away from a licensee program. And that happened in 2012. And right about that time, back about a few years before, I went through my own fitness transformation, got inspired, became a certified personal trainer. And I think I updated my Facebook profile, the personal trainer, and I started receiving ads from now my business partner, the founder of FitBody, called Bedros, talking about how to launch a program, how to get clients results. And he was talking about this little thing called FitBody Bootcamp that was as a licensee program that he was transferring into a full franchise system. And I put in expressive interest. I started following along, learning about sales, about marketing, about coaching. And in 2012, I did the most exciting, but also the most terrifying and scariest decision of my life. And I invested my life savings in this little dream of business ownership through FitBody Bootcamp. And I'll give you the highlights. There was a lot of lowlights and learning lessons along the way. From 2012 to 2018, ended up making a family affair. Brought my mom, my wife, my brother, my sister in the vision, ended up scaling to a handful of locations, 4 locations here in Southern California, 1 location in Michigan where my brother still lives. And that was the foundation of how I got involved in the brand and really how the first 6 years of the brand really started to erupt. And then about 2000, when the brand was really starting to grow in terms of exponential growth, Bedros, our founder, he knew that he needed more owner influence in the brand. So at that point in time, I was one of the most successful owners in the brand. I developed a strong network and relationship with him. So he reached out to me and eventually he offered me the vice president role, which then eventually became the CEO role. So big picture, that's how this guy from the Midwest who was allergic to lifting weights, who fast food is a staple of his diet, ended up becoming fit, a certified personal trainer, started with a franchise location, scaled to a handful, and then became ultimately the CEO of this brand.
That's great. That's a great story. I want to touch on the money side of things though. How was he able to finance this whole? I'm assuming it's got to be expensive to start up an initial licensing process and the business, and just not only just in terms of the brick and mortar location, but also the legal stuff in terms of getting the franchising processes in place. So how was he able to fund a lot of that? And did he have guidance through the process, or did he reach out to somebody, or did he just muddle through it as he went?
He's an incredible business coach and he's an incredible leader in terms of creating masterminds and coaching and leading masterminds. But he also joined a lot of masterminds in his early growth to learn sales, to learn persuasion, to learn marketing. So that was his foundation. But before he pivoted because of the Great Recession, he had a very successful one-on-one personal training practice. He actually had 5 locations that he used to rent space at a big box gyms here in Southern California. So he became very successful at that. And then it ended up in the transition, ended up selling his locations. So he had an influx of money that he was able to lay the foundation for the franchise. So that's how he got his start there. And to your point, Aziz, it can be very cost prohibitive, especially an entrepreneur starting a brick and mortar franchise or any franchise for that matter, because it's very cost and time prohibitive. That's also why it's a great opportunity if you don't have the vision or the funding to start your own franchise, exploring many other awesome franchises. Certainly shameless plug for FitBody, but there's also other amazing franchises out there that have the business model laid out. And for a fraction of the investment, what it would take to actually start a full-on franchise system yourself, you can buy into a franchise and be very successful at that. That's been my experience on how I was able to tap into this franchise, also giving you insight how our franchise was founded.
Very cool. Very cool. I think that's really interesting because you're in a unique position to give us a little bit of insight into both, right? The position as the franchisee and franchisor, and I don't remember which is which. You have a pretty good, probably very good insight into both of those. Okay, so I really like the way that you phrased it when you said that you took the biggest gamble of your life. You put your entire life savings into this. I think another thing that we touch on a lot on this show is accepting and dealing with risk, right? Because something like this is a risk. And a lot of the things that we're going to do in business and investing are risks. And this might even touch back further to that immigrant edge that you talked about, right? It's like hey, we've been at the bottom and we know we can get back up. Worst case scenario, right? Same thing, I'm sure, with your background. A lot of the punches you took growing up and things, and maybe that led to a certain level of confidence, knowing that in the end, everything's going to be okay. But tell me a little bit about that mindset, especially since you're still talking to entrepreneurs every day as they decide to come on board with you. How is that mindset and that approach to dealing with the risk, the worst case scenario, losing my whole life savings? That's terrifying. That's really legitimately scary. Please.
Totally. And that is the balance of an entrepreneur and investor being able to manage opportunity and also manage risk. And risk is just part of entrepreneurship and business. So for me, I have an appetite for risk. And I think at some level, from an entrepreneur perspective, you need to have an appetite. You need to have a vision of the future is better than just staying still. And for me, I always looked at, I got one shot. Friends, we got one shot, this thing called life. We got one guaranteed spin around this globe, and we don't have the guaranteed time on it. We know that time is fleeting. So for me, and this is why I love Stoic philosophy as my philosophy, there's many ways to look at it, but one of the things it can be critiqued because it can sound morbid, if you will, because you're analyzing your death. But when you bring up your death very close to you, actually what happens when you contemplate, when you think on your death, what's most important in your life actually shines to the front and it becomes very clear. So for me, whenever I'm making big decisions, big business decisions, big life decisions, whether to launch a business, launch a franchise, move to South America for a couple of years, I take a step back and I look, it's okay, is this going to fulfill me? If I know that I'm going to die, if I look back at my deathbed, am I going to be more regretful that I took the chance and failed or that I didn't take the chance at all? And that's served me really well. But that said, taking that with a grain of salt, the reality of this situation, and Warren Buffett, Uncle Warren, one of the greatest investors of all time, is always about talking about managing risk. Rule number one is don't lose money, and rule number two is revert to rule number one. So making sure that whatever investment, whatever entrepreneur endeavor that you're getting into, there's nothing guaranteed. There's no 100% foolproof plan. However, you have the opportunity to do your diligence. So for me, when I saw the opportunity for Fit Body, I gave you my origin story. I got fit. I went through my own transformation. So I was emotionally tied to the result that I wanted to give other people. So I already had confidence that fitness and circuit training and clean nutrition and coaching worked for me. So because I went through that experience, I had more confidence that it would work for other people. I also had more conviction. And when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a leader, when you're a business owner, you have to be the chief selling officer. You have to be the one with the most conviction in the brand. So I was very confident in that because I went through that own transformation. The second thing, it wasn't a shotgun decision for me. I got on Bedros's list in 2010. I think I went through my certification 2009. I updated my profile 2010, and I didn't launch the business for 2 years. And I'm not saying that you need to wait 2 years to do research, but for me, I was living in South America and I was taking a stepladder approach. I was like reading content, listening to things. So it wasn't like I saw an ad for a franchise and the next day I'm putting my $55,000 deposit in. This was a well-researched plan. I reached out. There was only a dozen at the time, but I reached out to every franchise partner I possibly could. I asked them not only about the business opportunity, but I asked them about my eventually business partner, Bedros. Like, how is he as a person? How is his character? So for me, it was definitely a very calculated, educated risk, but he's a risk at that. But I think that's really important for you to have an understanding of the business model, understanding of investment, passion about the investment, and to make sure you do your homework. And that's the best way, in my experience, to manage and mitigate that risk.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's super concise and real, right? Like you said, it's part of being an entrepreneur. It's part of life, right? There's nothing guaranteed in this world, and I love that. So I might actually ask, can you tell us a little bit more about Stoicism? I've talked to some entrepreneurs who are all about it. You mentioned a phrase earlier in this call. You said the obstacle is the way, which I think, is that a book? I think I've seen some of that, and I'm intrigued by it, but I haven't, I'll admit, I haven't like fully dived into it. But I think what I've seen is that the people who are doing it are operating at a really high level, and there's a certain, it's this weird balance of, I don't know how to say it. Forget about it. Like, whatever happens, and there's just this acceptance of sometimes you're going to get punched. Let's get up and go again.
And that's actually what Stoicism, there's a lot of foundational principles, but one of them is acceptance. It's the fact of the matter is, okay, I need to accept my current situation. I can't cry about my current situation, but I had to accept it and then look at the path forward. The easiest way to describe Stoicism from my perspective is turning any adversity into your advantage. Because let's face it, human nature, being a sign or being alive, you're going to face adversity. You're going to face challenge. You're going to face challenge. I'm going to face challenge. That's just the element of life. So it's not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to that. So for me, Stoicism is that philosophy of how to turn your advantage, or excuse me, adversity into your advantage. And I'll give you an example of this. It goes back to the immigrant edge. When 2010, when I decided to move to this little island in the very south of Brazil called Florianopolis, and I visited Rio de Janeiro about a year and a half prior. I just love it at first sight. I love the culture, the language. It was just beautiful to me. So I thought, you know what, I want to shoot back and live in Brazil for a couple of years. So I started asking my Brazilian friends here in Los Angeles, if you could move to one place, what would it be? And I never heard of this place before, but all of a sudden I started hearing this word or this island called, it went in my reticular activating system. So I got inspired, and you know what? I was like, I'm going to move to Florianopolis. So I ended up pitching the boss, my mentor that I just referred to. And he thought I was crazy, but you know what? He's, Bryce, you did me well. You've really sold for me and led for me really well. I'll let you shoot out for a year. Well, as it turns out, ended up being 2 years. But having that kind of immigrant edge, turning the adversity into your advantage. Let's face it, when I show up to Brazil, as it turns out, I got introduced to who would become my wife prior. So that was an incredibly fortuitous situation. She actually picked me up from the airport. She was introduced to me through a friend that she went to college with near in the East Coast in Ohio, but she was born and raised in Brazil. So that was a really cool thing. But really what I learned was probably one of my best skill sets, my ability to communicate and connect with people, was taken away because my language was taken away. Now, at the time, I didn't speak Brazilian Portuguese. Now I do. It's been 14 years learning that. But what I learned is, if I'm curious, if I can lean in, I'm actually a very interesting person when I'm in Brazil, because unlike here in the States where the immigrant community is very strong, thankfully we live in a very prosperous country where immigrants are coming over. In the south of Brazil, there's not that many people that are not Brazilian. So for me, when I open my mouth, the first question is like, where are you from? And people were very interested in that. Oh my God, you speak amazing Portuguese. Now, I didn't speak amazing Portuguese at that time, but the people are very warm and welcoming. So I turned that disadvantage into my advantage. And before you know it, I had a network of friends, one of my best friends to this day, and I'm meeting my wife, her family. I have a Brazilian set of parents. So I turned this like really exciting adventure, but also riddled with challenge, riddled with obstacle, into one of the best experiences of my life. And now fast forward 14 years later, I'm bilingual. I speak Brazilian Portuguese fluently. I've lived in Brazil for 2 years. I have an amazing family, amazing wife. And this never would have happened if I didn't have that mindset of, hey, if it has to be, it's up to me, taking the challenge and turning that into the way. The obstacle is the way. So that's in a bigger picture, my love and for the philosophy of Stoicism. It's a guiding principle that serves me well in business and in life till this day.
I gotta say, I gotta give out a shout out to Brazil, because you are not the first person I've heard that's come back from Brazil with a wife with no intention of going to get married.
No, I had no
I,
intention. My wife gives me a hard time to this day, but hey, it happened. But good on you
no,
He was
too.
just talking about some deep stuff, Aziz, and you're like, oh, you got married.
no, hey.
Go ahead.
No, I love Brazilians. Our closest family friends are actually Brazilians. They're like an extension of my family. Love them to death. But I did go to Brazil at one point with a couple of guys, and two of them came back with wives and happily married. And it's been like, what, I think like 17 years now. Yeah, great women. So there's something magical about that place. But going back to what you were saying, I completely jive and completely connect with a lot of the things that you were saying. Actually, everything that you said. It's all about turning any type of opportunity or any type of experience into something that can benefit your growth and can benefit your endeavors in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's, I think, a very critical mindset that people need to have.
Totally. The one other story too, and thank you for that, Aziz, really appreciate that. I'll give you another example. And Tony Robbins said this recently: turn your disappointments into your discipline your disappointments. And that's another way of looking at Stoic philosophy for me. Discipline your disappointment. So I shared at the very beginning of the call that my father is a drug addict addicted to alcohol and gambling, which is very true. Alcohol is in my family, and addiction is a genetic curse, if you will. So my father, probably his father, as it turns out, what I realized later in life when I was 29 years old, that I too had a problem with alcohol. Now, I had an issue seeing that. And the reason I say that is because most times when I thought of an alcoholic, I thought of someone living under a bridge or homeless, doesn't have work, drinking out of a brown paper bag. And that was never me. I was actually a very functional alcoholic. I would get my stuff done during the week, and then I would binge drink, if you will. But through a very challenging and one of the worst experiences of my life, a family member that I love dearly had an incredible amount of challenge with alcohol because, again, that generational curse continued on. And it was a very sobering moment for me to realize my family members, my life, things were, not going well. But I had to take a step back and had a deep look in the mirror. And I said, hey, I can do one of two things. I can continue on this path and really let this consume me and crush me, or I can take a step back. I can discipline my disappointments. I can turn my adversity, which is an alcoholic who's an addict genetically, and I can turn that into advantage, and I can actually, change the course of path of my life and my family's life. I can pick up working out. I can pick up clean living. I can change my addiction. So to that point, I just want to give you one other example of how Stoicism has really helped me, not only from a business perspective, from a life perspective.
No, again, just seeing that's one of those things that it's just so hard for someone who isn't addicted to understand how difficult it is. And again, just a really cool point about how your perspective can change everything. That's really powerful.
Yeah, thank you. And I just share that because I know there's someone listening to this or watching this going through some heartache and challenge, just like me, right? And probably just very frustrated and overwhelmed. But my message, my call to action is you can change that. You can turn that adversity to your benefactor, and you can make the obstacle in your way. So that's really the message that I want to share, speaking, about Stoicism. But
beautiful. I think we're just about out of time. I really am enjoying this, but do you have any other kind of last message that you'd like to share with the audience in terms of whether it's Stoicism or Fit Body Bootcamp or just any other words of wisdom you'd like to share? This has been awesome.
Oh, I appreciate your time. This has been an incredibly impactful conversation. I love your vibe, love your energy, and love the direction of the show. I always sign off my podcast because I feel like human nature, we need to act now, live with urgency. So I always sign off my podcast. No one is coming to save you. You must save yourself, and the time, my friends, is now. So I guess my passionate plea, if you're listening to this and you've been consuming your content, yes, you need to be able to gather information, you need to really educate, to learn. However, now is the time to take action. If you don't take action, nothing's going to change. And that's really my passionate plea that I wanted to leave your audience with today.
I love it.
Beautiful.
No one's coming to save you. I love it. You got to do it.
That's it. It's up to you.
That's very powerful. Thank you so much, Bryce. Really.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom, your journey, a lot of gems that were given out tonight. So definitely appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you in return, and nothing but love and good vibes, and would love to continue to add value to your audience. If you're listening to this and want to connect with me further, my podcast is the Fitness CEO Podcast, and you can find me on all the social media channels at Real Bryce Henson, not to be confused with Fake Bryce Henson. So would love to continue to be of service.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.